Welcome to the Naked Podcaster. Get ready to hear stories of someone brave enough to bear it all. Let's get naked. Welcome to the Naked Podcaster. I'm Jen Taylor, and today I'm so excited. I'm with Dwayne Claydon. Dwayne, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
And people are probably going to hear that you're in Canada because I can hear the accent. I was raised on the East Coast by the Canadian border, and I've been through Calgary where you're at.
Yeah, great. Well, as we talked a little bit earlier, we have snow now already. So I've been shoveling snow for about a week.
Well, and we're recording as of October 23rd. That is a devastating statement.
It was to me too. Next
Yeah.
week's supposed to be a little better, so we'll hope for that.
That's good. So if anybody hears the accent, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from Calgary. I am so excited about this because I always know just enough about my guests to be very, very, very curious. And I'm definitely very, very curious. So let's jump in and talk about DwayneClaydon.com. Everything will be in the show notes for people to find you. But tell me about your website.
Yeah. Well, my website, I guess, serves a couple of purposes. One is so people can get to know me and my background. So I was a police officer and a paramedic for 40 years in Calgary and area. And so I guess that's what's given me the information to write. So kind of like write what you know. So you get to know me on the website. There's a couple of pictures of me as a cop when I was a 19-year-old puppy that they never should have given a gun to. And then through my career as a paramedic, which was most of my career. And then I guess the second thing is showcasing my books. I mean, I love my books, and I'm excited to show them to people and tell people about them.
I think it's interesting on your website. Yes, and you're so cute, this 19-year-old. But you talk about how people are always happy to see the paramedics, but not always happy to see a cop, which is really sad to me, but probably very, very, very true. I have never had a negative experience with a police officer. But I mean, so that's a good thing, I guess.
Mhm.
But you switched, you did police and EMT and paramedic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I tell the story that, that people were nicer to paramedics, happier to see paramedics. Most of the interactions as a police officer were fine too. It was a different generation, a different time though. And, I started in 1978.
Yeah.
And actually yesterday I had lunch with three of my police academy classmates, and we were just talking about that. And at that time there was respect for the police, and it went both ways. I don't ever remember going to work fearing for my life. I was excited to go to work. And some of the guys I talk to now here in Canada go to work when they kiss their wife goodbye, they hug their kids. They're truly wondering if that's the last time it's going to happen, because things have changed so much on the street for the police.
Yeah, that's true. I grew up in the 70s, and it is a much different world now. And hard. It's hard now. We thought it was then, but it's different hard, I think, now.
Yeah.
You do some other really incredible things. You evaluate manuscripts.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a number of people who will sometimes they send me a part of a chapter and specifically want my advice on either the medical procedures in it or the police procedures in it, and is this what police would do? I have a few others who send me questions, just say, hey, I've got the police, they're going to do a search warrant on this place, how would they do it? Or questions like that. So
How fun is
I'm
that?
happy to answer those questions. And then at writing conferences, I also will speak on police and paramedic procedures. So I talk about bringing the realism into the writing, because funny, the things you see on TV that the police or paramedics do is not always what happens.
Oh, really? That's shocking. Because I thought, like, for example, Grey's Anatomy, which I've never watched, but that was how hospitals work, like.
Yeah, that's right. There's always 7 doctors available to take care of you. Yeah, I did a column
Right.
for a while on what TV and movies gets wrong, and Grey's Anatomy was probably the easiest.
That's probably why I picked it. I don't really watch. I've like I said, I've never watched that, but I'm imagining it's completely inaccurate. So that's really great. And I love, this is what I was super curious about, is that when I looked at your Amazon site, I was like, there's got to be something wrong. There are these paramedic books, and then these like they seem like they have nothing to do with each other. But no, you were like, nope, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. So during my paramedic career, I met a doctor in the US. We were at a conference, Brian Bledsoe, and we just hit it off and got talking. And he had put out the first edition of a book called Prehospital Emergency Pharmacology. At that time, I was teaching pharmacology at the school here to the paramedic class. And the guy that he originally wrote the book with was retiring and wasn't interested in continuing. So Brian asked me if I wanted to work with him on it, and I jumped at the opportunity. So just last year, we published the 8th edition. So it's been going on for, I guess, close to 30 plus years. It's in its category for paramedics. It's the #1 bestseller in North America and has been, I think, the entire time. It's used in Australia, used in Hong Kong, used in England. So yeah, so that was pretty exciting, and that led into a couple other textbooks. I took 2 U.S. textbooks for paramedics and just converted them into Canadian language. Just changing, the statistics. So the asthma statistics in Canada versus the States, or trauma and that sort of thing.
How much different are they?
Well, I think generally the idea is that Canada is 1/10 the size in population of the US. So if there's 330,000 deaths from asthma, then in Canada there would be, give or take, 33,000. It's not exact. So I did the research to find out at that period of time, what the exact statistics were.
That's great.
The systems are a little bit, the laws are a little bit different. So those were the sorts of things that I touched up in the books.
That is so fascinating. And your website is great. And you said you touched on speaking. Do you speak predominantly? Tell me about what you speak on mostly, or where.
The very first time I spoke at a writing conference, was in 2010. I really didn't know a lot about writers, or 2012. I really didn't know a lot about writers and had never been to a writing conference. And the topic I was speaking on was poison as a murder weapon. And so I went into the room. There was somebody ahead of me, and I kind of went into the room, was standing at the back. A fellow finished his presentation, and then I went up to the front and I got set up. And I was looking over my shoulder and I was thinking, well, these people aren't moving along very quickly to go to the next session. And then it was a few minutes before I was to speak. The room was completely full. There was people standing around the walls, and people were actually sitting at my feet. I'm a bit of a pacer when I speak, and I couldn't even move. There were so many people in the room. And so I kind of started my talk with, I didn't realize writers were such sick people. And so that has been, for the last 8 years, my #1 talk is poison as a murder weapon. I just did it by a Zoom meeting with the Ottawa, Ontario crime writers. So that's probably the most popular one. I do a couple on street drugs. So those are popular as well. And then the kind of tongue-in-cheek fun one is the what TV and movies gets wrong. And so that usually gets a laugh from the audience, because everybody, as you already pointed out, Grey's Anatomy, and you can pick any police show, firefighter show, medical show. Sometimes I wonder why they're doing that, because I worked in all 3 of those. At one point in time, I was a firefighter for 5 years. The one place I worked as EMS chief in Airdrie. And, all those careers are phenomenally exciting. So they really don't need to be embellished in any way. Now, it's not that every day is high action for 12 hours a day, but there's certainly enough things that are high action that get your heart pumping and get you excited about work every day without having to sensationalize it too much, or just do the wrong things.
Right. I think that's fascinating. I love what people are getting wrong, what things are wrong on TV shows, because we have a completely skewed image of what things are really like. And you're right, they are exciting. Yeah. That's crazy to me. I love how you have diversified. You've taken being an author and your career, and it's so unique, the directions that you've gone and how you've done that. I think it's really fantastic. And I want to go see Poison as a Murder Weapon. Not for any personal reason, just
Yeah. Yeah, the history of poisons is actually in the sick writer kind of way fascinating.
Right.
So yeah, and I try
You,
to make all my talks fun too. Now
yeah,
now Zoom makes it difficult though when you're talking. So it's you and I can kind of see each other now, but when you've
right.
got 30 people that are off to the side and I'm just talking to the monitor, and I always have jokes and I always have like a Far Side cartoon or funny cartoons in there, but everybody's muted. So you kind of tell the joke and then wait 7 seconds because you figure that's the appropriate amount of time for them to laugh, and then you continue on with the talk.
I've done the same thing. I speak also, and digital meant that you could get things out to a lot more people. It was much easier. So there were a lot of benefits to doing online speaking. I've done two since the pandemic hit through Zoom, and I really love a lot about it, but it is very disconnected from your audience.
Oh
You
yeah.
can't gauge where they're at or get a feeling for the room or anything like that. So
Yep.
it's very, very different. Yeah, yeah. You just have to go off of what worked in the past and what you think people are probably talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And when I do it live, I'm always looking for that one person who's paying attention and nodding and giving me that positive feedback. So I know, okay, they're still awake. That's good. They're nodding. That's even better. We can keep going.
I want to jump back in time, and that can be anywhere. You grew up in Calgary?
I did. Yes.
Okay, so Calgary forever. Um, Tell me about your childhood and go back to whenever you want to start the story, because definitely reading is going to be super fundamental in this conversation.
Yeah, I grew up in West End, Calgary, community called Bowness. Actually, when I was born and for the first number of years, it was a town and then was annexed into Calgary. It's a great area. There's a park called Bowness Park. It's a big park right on the river, and it actually plays prominently in my books. So I talk about Bowness and the park. Um, and my mom was a reader, and I think always was a reader. And some of my earliest memories of we had a truck and camper, and we would go camping. And I remember my sister and I being kind of in the bunk over the cab, and mom was sitting at the table and reading stories to us. And I'm not really sure what the first stories she read were, but then it was Bobbsey Twins and Hardy Boys. And I also remember that I couldn't watch my favorite TV shows in the mornings. So this was before I started going to school, until I had done some writing or I had done some reading. And so that, of course, I hated that at the time, and I thought that was horrible. But then pretty soon I was reading Hardy Boys on my own, and that was mom's influence right there. And I can't be without a book or a couple of books, and that's been my entire life. And we would go camping for 3 weeks, and if in those 3 weeks I ran out of books to read, I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do, and I would reread just because I didn't have anything else. But just loved reading. So the Hardy Boys graduated into um, Perry Mason, Earl Stanley Gardner. Then into the 70s, Joseph Wambaugh was a big influence on my writing. He was he was the first writer as an LA detective to write about really what it was like on the street, that it was dark, that it was scary, that there were monsters out there. Whereas at that time on TV, it was One Adam 12 and Dragnet, and they
Yep.
were happy shows, and they always had happy endings, and nobody really got beat up and nobody got shot. And if they fired the gun, they always missed, and that sort of thing. And it was happy. And he kind of changed that. And then with that too, I think his influence was on Hill Street Blues, for those who remember Hill Street Blues in the 80s. And that was a completely different police show, that it had the dark side, it had the realism to it. So those all played a role. And I guess in my writing is that I want to be realistic. The banter between the guys or ladies in the car. I mean, you're with your partner 12, 14 hours a day. You're with them more than you're with anybody else, your significant other, spouse, kids. You're with your partner a lot, and you know everything about them, and you also know which buttons to push. And when the time comes, you just hammer on that button and push it when you can. And there's lots of sarcasm and there's lots of laughs. And then you get the call, and everybody comes together, and you got each other's back. And then an hour later, you're I guess it's our dark humor somewhat, which may be a little politically incorrect now. People don't understand it. But I guess over my career as a police officer, paramedic, and my classmates too that I've talked to, we see things that nobody really should see.
Yeah.
And so we have to figure out a way to burn that off. And sometimes it's tough talking specifically about the incident, but you can talk around it. And in that way, you're releasing it, you're letting that stress off. Certainly not for public consumption, but you have to decompress a little bit, because it could be as short as 2 minutes later or 2 days later, you're right back in the thick of it again, and you've got to have your head clear. And whether that's as a police officer or paramedic, it's the same. You've got to put what happened now behind you and get ready for the next thing that happens.
There's a lot more statistics out now about PTSD in those two jobs. And because, yeah, we want you there when we need you there. But I mean, I know what I've seen, not as a police officer and a paramedic, just in my life, the accidents that I've witnessed, or the scenes that I've walked onto that I can never forget. And that's just a glimpse of your everyday. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's a lot that's come out. So I think the dark humor is super helpful, super helpful. It doesn't have to be politically correct. You're right. It just needs to decompress you. And yeah, and I know that just from the glimpses that I've seen. So, and it's interesting that we don't think about, I always thought about my kids, when they go to school, they're spending more time with the teacher during the week than they are with me. So have a good relationship with your kid's teacher, but you with your partner, that is so much more. Yeah. Those are long shifts. Has there been an experience where you needed a break from a certain partner, or there was a partner that was tough to be with or around?
Well, probably in my second year as a police officer, I had a partner who was really tough, and he's actually more or less a character in my Brad Coulter series. In the series, his name is Briscoe, so it's changed, but he was a real tough guy. And like I said, by then I was a 21-year-old, still a puppy with a gun, still not sure what I was doing, and he was about a 17-year veteran. So he'd seen it all, he'd done it all, and I had to prove myself. And he was so hard on me that, not that I cried, but maybe I got close sometimes, because he really was hard on me. And until I proved myself on one particular call, he didn't even talk to me in the car most of the time. We just drove around. And then I proved myself, and then we ended up with a good relationship, and I ended up, I go to his house for family dinner. I got to know his wife and his kids, and things were better. But the initial part was, I was thinking, oh, I've been on the job 2 years, I'm a veteran now. And, to him, I was his rookie. And till the day he died, he called me rookie. And you live with nicknames like that. And as a paramedic, anybody I trained is my rookie now. So it gets passed down the line, and you pass it on. And initially I took it as, he's being mean to me saying rookie. And then afterwards I realized it was more term of endearment. It's probably wrong. But he didn't mean it in as horrible a way as I thought it was. And Absolutely. He always had my back. There was no question in my mind that he would always have my back on stuff. And so he taught me that as well.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, sometimes there are always, in the struggle, there are always these silver linings that we don't always see initially, huh? I love that. Yeah. Tell me about taking the bus when you were about to. So we know you're voracious, and you like crime or mystery or stuff like you're drawn to that from a super young age. Was that because of what your mom was reading to you, or was that completely on your own?
No, I suppose it probably was, because we still read the same things and exchange books back and forth. So we read John Grisham. She likes Clive Cussler, Michael Connolly. So the books are, still going back and forth between us. So, yeah, so when I was, elementary age, so I don't know, like grade 4-ish, I think, I was reading comics, and close to downtown was a used comic store. And it was, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes by bus ride. And I took the bus down at 11 years old, and I would take the comics that I had read down, and Hardy Boys as well, and I would trade them in at the bookstore and get my whatever it was $1.17 credit. Then I would go to the shelves and pick out new comics, and later on, the Hardy Boys, and then I would head back home. And so what Mom had done was she made me a bag lunch. And so when I got back on the bus to come home, I would eat my bag lunch and I would start reading my comic books, which was maybe not the best idea, because I think there was times I had pretty much gone through them by the time I got home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, I'll take the bus back down right now because I'm out. But yeah, and I did that frequently. So through the summer, I would probably go twice a week down to the used bookstore and turn them in and head back home and read.
What a great memory. I have memory. It's so different now. I want to jump in here and ask you a related question. How do you feel about the Kindle or the Nook or things like that?
I go back and forth. I certainly like
I do too.
the ease of Kindle.
Right.
I mean, I still like to have a book in my hand, and certainly you're in a warmer climate than I am. Even in summer here, you can probably use a Kindle outside, but we try in the winters to do a nice warm vacation somewhere, and I find that the Kindle kind of gets too hot too quick. And I would prefer just to have a book anyway. You're by the pool or whatever. So on vacations, absolutely, I take books. Some of my favorite authors come out with books in the fall. So I always ask for them for Christmas, and then I save them until we go on vacation. So I have books to read. But Kindle's kind of easy when you finish a book to go, I need something else to read, and go on to Kindle. And I'm reading, I lucked out. I was told about an author. His name's Peter James. He's an English writer, writes crime. And I went on to Kindle, and his first 10 books were together in a bundle for $30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, $3 a book, that's 10. I can have that in my bank whenever I need it. Well, he's so darn good that I'm on the 4th book now and haven't slowed down reading him. So it does make it easy. I'm a night reader.
Okay.
So if it's 11:30 at night, I'm still not tired and I finished a book, it's pretty easy to find something else to read for another half hour.
Yeah.
But I do like hardcover still.
Me too. And there's a smell in a bookstore that you just can't, especially the older leather books, that just so good. It's so good. But I also love, I couldn't possibly have as many books as I have on my Kindle. I would need so many shelves. So I'm really grateful that we can do it that way. And I choose wisely the books that I purchase that I want to hold in my hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, much different world from back in trading comic books and stuff like that. Because that was a big deal for me too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think some of the Hardy Boy books, I wished I'd hung on to them.
Yeah.
I went to a bookstore a year ago, and a used Hardy Boy book was like $17, and it was a recent edition. The editions that I got had kind of a brown cover on them. They weren't even a in color cover.
Yeah.
I think they were early 50s. I think 54 to 56 was the copyright date in a lot of them. Should have hung on to those.
Yeah, if we only knew. Who would have thought that would be a thing? My husband's got a collection of comic books. Not a lot of them, but man, you don't breathe wrong on those. You just the baseball cards, you don't breathe wrong.
Yeah, and I a lot of the ones that are worth a lot of money now were ones that I read, the Flash versus Superman and a few of the Batman, but I mean, I read them, they were dog-eared. So even if I had kept them, they wouldn't be worth a lot of money because I read and abused and traded them with friends back and forth. But it'd still be cool to kind of still have those.
Yeah, no kidding. So now I want to jump up in time a little bit into, you're voraciously a reader. I have always been, and I love that when you can instill that into your own kids too. So the kids of mine that really love to read, it's so fun. It's so fun the direction that they go. You can learn anything. I mean, I think once you learn how to read and you realize the whole world is open to you, you can find anything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then reading becomes very exciting. So high school, you get into high school and keep taking me on, because you had to transition at some point to your love of reading to writing.
Yeah, well, so in high school, I liked writing satire. Um,
Okay.
and so I kind of wrote Saturday Night Live stuff before there was Saturday Night Live. So I think Saturday Night Live started in about 1974, and in 1972 I was writing spoof stuff, and for some reason I could look at something and see the funny side to it or the satire side to it. So a lot of my writing, I wish I had it. A lot of my writing in high school was along those lines. The side was also in social studies class. I liked writing reports. So
Yeah, I read
I
that.
guess the
That's
writing
next.
was just there.
Right.
Totally different style of writing, but that came into play later too, with the paramedic textbooks,
Yeah.
because that's more technical writing, research writing. So that came into play. So high school, I wrote fun stuff, and then pretty much right away I was in the police department, and then you're writing reports, and I look at some of my reports and my notes, and I go, okay, for a guy who thought he was a writer, you write pretty bad reports, and your notes are pretty bad. Um, and then the writing thing disappeared with profession, with family. I kept reading though, still voraciously reading. Then I guess probably into Tom Clancy was a favorite for a
Mm-hmm.
number of years. His thick tomes on 80 pages on the running, how a nuclear submarine works, and things like that. Um, and then 2010 was a big change in my life. My marriage of 25 years fell apart, and that was in the spring. In the spring, I was coaching football, so that kind of kept me busy. And then in the fall, I was coaching football. And in early October 2010, I guess I was self-aware enough, which surprises me because I have trouble writing emotion, but somehow I was self-aware enough that when football was over, winter was coming, I'd be alone with my thoughts, and that might not be such a good idea. And I do my best thinking in the shower. And so as I remember it, I was in the shower the one morning for whatever reason, thinking about that, got out of the shower and thought, maybe you should do some writing. And so I went to work. I Googled writing classes. There was one that started the next week. So I thought, well, this must be what's supposed to happen. I signed up for it and went to the class. And there were 8 of us in the class, 7 ladies and me, instructor. And then we were to write a piece and circulate it to the whole class and the instructor for reading. And I have no clue why I put up my hand, because generally I'm a sit in the back of the class kind of guy. You don't notice me. I'm not volunteering for anything. And for some reason I said, oh, sure, I'll write something and submit it. So I did. And I picked a story that was from Calgary history, a day, kind of a dark day in the history of the police department. December 20th, 1974, a gunman was holed up in a garage that had an oil pit in it. So he was down low, but the police didn't know this. And he's shooting at the police out from the garage, and they're shooting in. Nothing like this had ever happened in Calgary, so there were no protocols. Essentially, cops went home and got their hunting rifles and came back, and cases of ammunition were passed around. 5 officers were injured and 1 was killed in this incident. So again, for some reason, I had kept the newspaper clippings from that incident. So through all my many moves through college, police training, different houses, I had kept that information. So I had the references. So I wrote the story. I put my own kind of fictional spin on it, and then gave it to the class. And I was just terrified. I'm thinking, oh my, the poor ladies in this class, they're reading about me writing about shooting and guys getting injured. And anyway, they all loved it. But the interesting thing was they felt sorry for the bad guy. And so the way I had written the bad guy, they connected with him and felt the cops were just kind of all the same, that no one kind of stood out, even though I did have a main character who was supposed to stand out. but didn't. But it was the bad guy who stood out. And to this day, I still get comments, and I think I do write the bad guys better than I do the good guys. And I don't know what that says about me or the evil side of Dwayne. And then the funny part was, though, my instructor said, "Oh yeah, it's a well-written piece, but it reads like a policy manual."
Oh, shocking! Because at this point, you had already written the pharmacology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that makes sense.
So that was, I guess, a bit of a revelation, and that was, but it was great she said that, because then I had to change my thinking. I had to change from do this, do this, do this, do this, to just telling the story.
Much
and so
different.
that took a number of years. I took writing classes for the next 5 years. Worked on Crisis Point, worked on Crisis Point, worked on Crisis Point. There's part of me now that looks back and says, that one probably should have just gone in the desk drawer, and I should have gone on to another story, because I did put many years into that story. And I was kind of ready to give up in about 2015. I just wasn't sure what to do. I kind of felt my writing biological clock was ticking.
Okay.
Thinking, okay, you know what? People had told me that if you get a publisher, well, you got to get an agent. You'll probably be with an agent for a year. If they get you a contract, that'll sit with the publisher for 2 years or more before it's published. And I started counting up the years, and I'm thinking, okay, well, at least my kids hopefully will be rich when I die, and these books finally get published or something. So I was trying to decide whether I would independent publish or maybe even just quit. And I had sent Crisis Point into the Crime Writers of Canada competition, and they had an award for the best unpublished novel. And I kind of even forgot that I had applied about it. A friend told me to apply. I really didn't even know what I was applying to. I sent it in and was totally shocked. Well, the word I use is gobsmacked, when my name was announced as a finalist. So final 5 in Canada for the award. So I went down to Toronto for the award ceremony. And to me, it was kind of like, attending the Academy Awards. The room was full. It wasn't a huge room. There's maybe 110, 120 people in there tops. But it was just cool to be there. And so that reinvigorated my writing. I didn't win. I did hear afterwards, somebody told me that I came in second. So that was good. That gave me a little more incentive to keep going. And then I did decide that I was going to independently publish myself, and Crisis Point was published in 2018. So it was my first novel.
How great. Okay, so you had, if I jump back a little bit, you had the police force paramedic, some years as a firefighter, a 25-year marriage that ended, and then all of your writing for the technical man. I mean, like, you took a lot and put it all together for this.
Yeah, I had a wonderful career. I mean, I had so many opportunities to do so many different things that it's perfect for writing now.
It's perfect for writing, yes.
I'm not saying I know everything about everything. I do spend lots of time on Google checking facts and that sort of thing. But as far as what actually happens on the street, I've got that nailed down.
Tell me a little bit about submitting Crisis. So you've gotten all of this, and it's really interesting. I guess I'm just a little bit fascinated by the fact that one of the things that's more difficult is tapping into the emotion. Mm-hmm. I don't think that that's uncommon, but you're picking some pretty emotional subject matter in your fiction books. So that's a tough thing to get. Tell me about submitting Crisis Point. No, I know you won the award, but what about when you receive feedback from a pitch to submit it as a manuscript? You were still thinking publishing house at that point.
Yeah, I was, and I knew nothing about pitches, but I've always been I've been a public speaker. So as a paramedic, I spoke at paramedic conferences all across North America for 30 years. And so, I mean, pick a place: Baltimore, Washington, California, Texas. I mean, I went to all these. I was kind of on the EMS circuit. So public speaking was no problem, and talking about my work is no problem. And, we could go on for 4 hours and I probably wouldn't shut up on it. Um, so I didn't even know there was a thing as pitching. I was walking around the exhibit hall in 2010, actually, when I was at this writers conference, trying to, learning what this was all about, and looking at the books. And there's a guy who represented a publishing company, and we just got talking. And it wasn't about me making a pitch or anything, but he asked me questions, and I talked about my background and talked about the book. And I can't remember his exact words, but it was along the lines of, "You got a very interesting background. If you put that into a book, that'd be worth looking at. So send it to me." I thought, "Oh, wow, this is great." So I sent it to him, and I was just waiting for the feedback on it, thinking, "Oh, this is great." I was, figuring out who was going to be in the movie version of it, and maybe to be a TV series and stuff like that. And then the feedback came back, and he kind of said, you got the bones of a story here. It's not quite right yet. I'm not really sure how to help you on it. It's kind of like there's a police show on the TV in the other room and you don't care. So that would have been,
wow.
I think it was about September 2012. And so I stopped writing. And so I didn't look at Crisis Point. I didn't take any more writing classes, and I really just dropped it. And I thought that just devastated me. And I'm okay with feedback. I was in a profession where, if you didn't follow the right steps, you definitely got feedback, and stronger than feedback. In no uncertain terms, you were told you had screwed up. But that was just a gut punch. Probably the emotional state I was in, sort of thing, that writing was what was the glue that was still holding me together.
Right.
And then it just got knocked out of me. So I didn't do anything. And then a couple of friends who we'd had a writing group, and they just said, "No, you can't stop. You can't stop. You can't stop. Forget that. We've looked at your stuff. We like your stuff. We're helping you make it better. So keep going." So they pulled me away from the cliff, and in January, and then I signed up for another writing class, and then I kept going and I kept working on it. But and I don't know. I don't think he wrote it to be mean. I think he just wrote it. And they say never write an email in anger. Not that he was angry, but I think he just wrote down what he was thinking and sent it. Yeah. And really didn't look at what it was he had sent, or when he met me, he thought I was more together than I was. I was putting on a good act of being okay, and didn't realize that something like that would devastate me. So now when I'm helping somebody, editing stuff for them, I take great pains to make sure that I find good things about the story. And if I'm going to say something that needs to be corrected, I'm going to coach it in a way that I'm not just taking their knees out from under them. You might want to consider blah, 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 and back up what I've said. So not just say, "I'm not sure how to fix this. I'll find a way. I'll find a website that they can read and refer to," or somebody else's writing. There's lots of great books to help writers. Stephen King has written a book on writing that has great tips in it. So so I take that devastation I felt, and boy, I'm going to make sure I don't do that to anybody.
Tell me about your biological writing clock, because that's really, that sounds funny to me, but why did you feel so much pressure?
Well, I'm 62. And I hope I keep writing till I'm 80. I don't see any reason why I couldn't, because I got story on top of story on top of story. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But I guess I needed that book in my hands. If I had kept writing and I was 4 or 5 stories into it and I still hadn't ever published one, I just don't think I
Right.
would have continued. It wasn't necessarily immediate gratification from a book, but I kind of needed that validation, I guess. So in 2015, being nominated for the award to me was a
Mhm.
validation of my peers that my writing was on track.
Right.
Um, and so then just looking at, well, I guess the other thing is I did have an agent for over a year.
Okay.
And after 2015, I had an agent from the Arthur Ellis Awards. An agent was there and gave me her card. And so after 37 rejections,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought, okay, so we've taken, almost 2 years now. So from 2015 up into 2017 now, I still don't have Crisis Point published and no prospects.
And
Um,
37 rejections. Like the first one was a definite gut punch, but
yeah,
getting 37, I really want people to hear that because there's nothing wrong with going that route of publishing, but that it is so difficult. And that doesn't mean that your book isn't fantastic and you self-publish it.
no, well, that was the thing that, not that I want any more bad feedback on my writing, but most of the feedback was good.
Oh, good.
Like, obviously knows what he's writing about. The plot was solid. Loved the characters, and then there would always be a tagline at the end. We're not taking any crime novels at this time. We don't do crime novels. We have novels for the next 2 years. Consider submitting in a year. So most of the comments were complimentary, and it was almost like part of me wished they had said it was terrible.
All right.
It was hard when they said, hey, it's great, but we're not going to take it. Hey, it's
Right.
really good. They're not going to take it. And you just look through these comments and you go, well, what the heck do I have to do? And of course, the feedback isn't deep enough to tell you what you need to do different. So it's really just a polite rejection.
Right.
And so you look at it and you go, well, I don't even know what I need to do different. And during that time, I mean, my agent had suggested things to change, and she had read it and gone through, and I'd made those changes. And then I hired an editor
Okay.
and went through it, and then we resubmitted. So I thought I was doing all the things I needed to do to make it stronger. But I couldn't convince an acquisition editor or a publisher of that. But now I've got the 3 in the series out. The 4th one comes out in a couple of weeks, and I have great fans. They send me emails saying, "Hey, I hate you. I had to read till 1 o'clock to finish the novel. It was great." And I've had people, when I've been on Facebook, I've had people send me a message saying, "What are you doing on Facebook? I'm waiting for your next book. You should be writing." So people do like the books, and so that's a great reward, great satisfaction in that. And I was thinking, okay, so why didn't these publishers see the potential in this?
Right. Now you went through that 2 years, you tried to go that route. With all of that, I mean, I know they were saying this is good, but we're not accepting it. And you're right, it's so hard. Like, just tell me why. The
Mm-hmm.
why, not the okay. I always felt like I don't need you to tell me nice things. It's great, but like I want you to tell me how to make things better.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating. What made you decide to just basically bite the bullet and go the self-publishing route after all? You've got a lot of years invested in this at this
Yeah.
point. And you did that in 2018. So tell me about that process in deciding that.
Yeah, I think it wasn't going anywhere with the editor.
Mhm.
And like I said, it was publish or quit, really, is probably where I was at. I had Outlaw written, so I had a second book written.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it was, I need to get this one out. I need to go to the printers and pick up 10 boxes of books, and I just needed to hold that in my hand to keep
Yep.
me going. And so I took the plunge on that, and then people liked it. I got good feedback. In hindsight, I don't think I'm supposed to say this. Crisis Point probably isn't my best writing. Hopefully I got better as I went along. So Outlaw was better than Crisis Point. Wolfman is better. My new book, Speargrass, people write. A friend of my mom's, who was a elementary school teacher. I didn't have her as a teacher, but I knew her. She's a big fan, and she gives me positive feedback. And so I know people like the books. but I wouldn't have this excitement today if I hadn't gone ahead and published Crisis Point.
Oh, 100%. And you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
I have kids. So I can, with all honesty, tell you that when you publish your first book and I remember picking up the box, right? You went and picked up the box.
Yeah.
And you can't wait to open it, and you pick it up, and it is the most unbelievable feeling. It is the closest to having a child, because, and I'm a mom, I did the giving birth, so I can absolutely tell you that it is a very, very close second to that, because you pour your heart and soul and years most of the time into this first one, especially. And it is unbelievably emotional and overwhelming when you hold that first copy.
Oh yeah. I was just giddy. I was just like, it was Christmas, it was birthday, it was every celebration all in one. And I was just holding it in front of me like this. I was just, and shaking. I was just looking at it. There it is. There it is. There it is. I did it.
Yeah, it's an incredible, I know I published my first book and I was like, holy cow, 85% of people that want to publish books don't. I want to help all the people that, I had such a passion in me as a voracious reader, but also as a writer. And you really want to be able to help people. And you can do that through your speaking and stuff. So you did that one and it was successful. And now you've got this entire series going. Is it all the same series? Do you have to read the first one to read the others?
It is a series, and you should. Yeah. So Crisis Point will give you the background on the character Brad Coulter. Outlaw, the second one, is again about Brad Coulter, but you could start there and you would be okay. You would still, get enough of his background. There's a little bit going back into Crisis Point talking about it. But in Outlaw, there's a character, his name is Jeter Wolf. He's a biker. And as I said, I do bad guys better. And Jeter Wolf is a despicable, horrible person. So when Outlaw came out, I was getting emails from people saying, you had the chance to kill him. Why didn't you kill him? We hate him. You just should have killed him. So instead, I brought him back for revenge in the third book, Wolfman is Back. So you could skip Crisis Point, you could start with Outlaw, but you really need to hate Jeter Wolf before you go to Wolfman to really appreciate how bad he is and what a nasty character he is. So.
I want to talk about your progression also, because writing is really tough. And there's a difference between being a writer and being an author, where it's more of your career as an author, where I'm more of a writer. And it's something I do on the side that I love. And so there is a differentiation, because you went from a writer who wanted to publish to an author. And it's almost painful. Like Hemingway says, you just sit at the typewriter and bleed, right? I mean, it's like legitimately painful. But when you become an author, there's a different drive inside of you. And you've written books in relatively rapid succession. So you held that copy in your hands for the first time, and then what? Like you've got like your 7th book written, correct?
I'm halfway through my 7th book.
Yeah. Okay. How did that process happen for you? When did you arrive to decide that that was your career path and not just something you liked?
Yeah. So let me think time frame. Shortly after, in 2018, after Crisis Point came out, I decided, I think this is it. Then when Outlaw came out, the next year, 2019, then that was it. I was going to move full speed ahead. I had ideas for stories. I was ready to go. The big thing was in 2018, I went to a writing conference in Vancouver, BC. And I went to a session. I was speaking there, but I went to some sessions as well. The one session was a panel on what's the best writing advice you ever received.
Okay.
And on the panel was an author by the name of Jonas Saul. And paraphrasing everything for time-wise, essentially he said, writing your manuscript is great because few people do that, but it kind of means nothing. Getting your first book published, as you said, few people do. It kind of means nothing. You have to keep writing books because we are in a binge society. We're in a Netflix society. We're in a fast food society where I drive through and get it. So if people find your book, my book, Crisis Point, and they go, hey, it's great. What else do you have? And I say, I don't have anything else. They might wait the year, or they might move on to somebody else and totally forget about me. So my drive right now is to get the momentum going, so that I do have books going that people can read. So there's 3 Crisis Point right now. The 4th one will come out in November. The 5th one will come out next March. It's in final edit right now, so I'm ahead of it.
Wow.
Spirit, a totally different series, came out in the summer. It's getting good reviews too, so I'll write a sequel to that. So I guess, what keeps me going is people want to read it, I guess. I mean, I want to write it. I've got stories to tell. They like the way I tell the stories, and now I don't want to let them down. I mean, when people, email on Facebook or message me on Facebook saying, hey, stop goofing off, we're waiting for your story. That's, okay, yep, you're right. I'll stop.
Yeah.
Or I want to get back to writing. I hate being interrupted when I'm on a roll.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst. That's got to be the worst thing.
Yeah. So the other advice Jonas gave me is because I'm doing this full time now, is that you need to set goals each day. He has a goal of 5,000 a day, which I think is incredible. I'm more of a 2,500 to 3,000. But if I'm on a roll, I've done a couple of 6,000 word days. Just because it was all flowing. And so I think by having the goal, and whether it's 100 words a day or 250 or 750 or whatever it is, by having daily goals, it keeps you in the story. And then when you're shopping, maybe you think about it or you see something, and it makes it easier than if you're coming in and out of writing the story. But life gets in the way too. I mean, if you have family and you have a job, it makes it tougher. But I think if you have these, even if they're tiny goals, will just keep you in the story. And then eventually it's like exercise. Everybody hates exercise. And when you get away from it for a few months or a year, those first 3 weeks getting back into it are horrible. You don't want to make the drive. You don't want to change clothes. You don't want to have to shower afterwards, all those things. And then after 3 weeks, you wake up before your alarm clock in the morning because you want to get there. And I think it's the same with writing, that setting, a goal of 250 words a day for 3 weeks. Once you get that 3 weeks, you'll go, oh, 250 is easy. I can do 7. Oh, I can do 1,000.
The best advice I ever got is 30 minutes. So it wasn't even a word count. It was just a time. Same thing with exercising. Just almost everybody has 30 minutes in their day if it's a priority, just like exercise. So, but the same thing. And then you'll realize that 2 hours has gone by. Let it happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just let it go. I mean, sometimes I think my characters are writing the story. I'm just there to type it. Their voices are going in my head, or I know my characters now, and especially in a series, I know what Brad Coulter's going to do. So I don't have to think about how he'll react. I just keep going, and I know what he'll say to his partner. I know what he'll say to a sergeant.
Right. I love how voracious you were about the Hardy Boys, and that you're giving your readers you're giving that to them now so that they can be voracious in your story. I love that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Dwayne, thank you so much for being on. It was truly a pleasure.
Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.